I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Today, Brian Kohberger has returned to court flaunting a slight smile, almost a month shy of a much-anticipated quadruple murder trial in Moscow, Idaho in October. I was actually in Moscow myself in May this year. Kohberger's alibi is quite astute from a legal position, given the legal position he finds himself in. His alibi is basically that he went for a drive on the night of November 12th, going into the early morning hours of November 13th last year. And obviously this isn't new. It came out about 2 weeks ago, but I think it's the first time someone is actually saying, in terms of the legal merit of his defense, that it's actually not too shabby. Before we deal with the legal merits of that argument, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So I'm sure you've read it, but let's go through it one more time. His alibi reads, quote, Mr. Kohberger has long had a habit of going for drives alone. Often he would go for drives at night. He did so late on November 12 and into November 13, 2022. Mr. Kohberger is not claiming to be at a specific location at a specific time. At this time, there is not a specific witness to say precisely where Mr. Kohberger was at each moment of the hours between late night November 12, 2022 and early morning November 13, 2022. He was out driving during the late night and early morning hours of November 12 to 13, 2022. Now, in a legal sense, the burden now shifts to the prosecution to prove their case and also to show Kohberger at the scene of the crime. Are they going to be able to do that? In the Caitlin Armstrong case, CCTV showed what appeared to be the suspect's vehicle passing by the victim's home on the night of the murder. Her defense lawyer notes that the license plate isn't visible and neither is the driver. The same situation could arise in this case. And so the question comes up, in any of that CCTV, can you see the license plate? Because then you could argue, well, it could be any generic Hyundai, white Hyundai Elantra. And I suppose you could, if you're the defense, you could say, well, how many of these vehicles were in Moscow at any one time? And if there's more than one, well, then you immediately have a potential problem. Ironically, in a death penalty case, the burden of proof may need to be higher than in an ordinary case. You might have a jury who feel, I need to be absolutely sure about this before I'm going to decide one way or the other. And so by leaving the door open to his precise movement, Kohberger can also allow the prosecution to present their evidence, including the shortcomings, which may allow him a loophole. For example, if there's a certain camera in a certain position that does capture his license plate, well, then he could say, dealing with another camera that doesn't capture it, that he was somewhere else. He can kind of make up a route that can, in a way, justify the time and the scheduling of how he's seen in some of these cameras. Of course, if none of the CCTV picks up his license plate, well then, in a way, how do they prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt? And if you think about it, there has been a lot of secrecy surrounding the CCTV of Kohberger's vehicle. I mean, I think the Food Mart screen grab that was released wasn't given out by law enforcement. That was something that an employee took a photo of and gave to the media. And so I think a vital aspect is whether the license plate on any of the footage is legible. Bear in mind, it was late at night and it was dark. If it isn't legible, then Kohberger scores a point. You might argue that Kohberger's alibi is weak, but in the JonBenet Ramsey case, the ransom note is an extremely poor alibi, given that a dead body was found inside the Ramsey home. And yet, arguably, weak as it was, what it did was it presented a potential alternative scenario. Not necessarily a very cogent or sensible or logical alternative scenario, just a potential alternative scenario. The fact that Kohberger has admitted he has a habit of driving around habitually is a better alibi than you might think. What do you think is the strongest evidence in this case? Besides the DNA, it just might be the eyewitness who saw him at point blank range. Was she sober when she saw him? Just how good a look at him did she get? And how willing is she going to be to testify about everything she saw and knows? And then there's also the cell phone data, the GPS of the cell phone. Is that going to be the smoking gun in this case? Now, I'm not going to take it further than this. I did put up a poll on my community tab. It's something that I've been wanting to deal with, not only in this case, the Idaho student case, because at one point there were people strongly inferring and suggesting that Kohberger was a serial killer. And now that we're dealing with the Huerman case, well, now people are thinking, could there be two serial killers? And so there seems to be a perception, because of all this chatter and all the documentaries about serial killers, that serial killers are running amok in America right now. And this channel isn't the most authentic voice in true crime for nothing. We don't try and sensationalize things here. We don't try and distort things here. We don't try and exaggerate things here, right? And so I think it's time to have a discussion about the facts of serial killers. And, is it a normal and natural and intelligent analysis to be thinking that someone who commits a crime could be a serial killer? Could there be multiple serial killers in Gilgo Beach? So I'll be looking at the facts regarding that within the fabric of the Huerman case, in the fabric of the Long Island serial killer. So look out for that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.